Happy New Year. How are you guys? Good. So good to see you. 2025 is here. And we're just so excited about it. My name's Colin Edwards. I'm the associate pastor here, and we are excited to kick off a brand new series, to kick off a brand new year. Before we jump into that, we are 5 weeks away from celebrating 10 years as a church. Can we put our hands together for that? 5 weeks. Everyone in here, if you're watching me online, if you're in here right now, mark your calendars, February the 9th. I hope that date is correct. February the 9th, 5 weeks from today. We've got some details rolling out about that in the next couple of weeks. But we're going to actually be having one giant service. So it won't be two services, one giant service where we're all going to get to be together. We're going to have to do it off-site because we won't be able to get everybody in here. So we're going to be rolling those details out 5 weeks from today. We couldn't be more excited. And then beyond that, there's just been a ton of prayer going on, a ton of strategy going on. What's next, right? Where are we heading from here after we celebrate 10 years? So we just want you to be looking forward to that like we are. Until then, we are going to be in a 4-week series that is starting this morning. The name of this series is Overflow. Somebody shout Overflow. We're going to be talking all about it for the next 4 weeks. And the main idea for this entire series right here is this: what's in your heart will overflow from your life. Let's process that together for a minute. What's in your heart will overflow from your life. And we're going to be asking different questions throughout this series. Questions like, are we overflowing with the right things? Are the right things erupting out of our lives? We're going to be asking questions like, are there things in us that need to shift so that right things will start to overflow? How many of you want right things to come out of your life? But here's the problem, if I can just be honest out of the gate, so many of us are overflowing with the wrong things. We feel it every single day, don't we? Things that are coming out of our life that we wished were not there. We're going to be talking about it all series long, but our prayer throughout this whole series is just simply that all that God has for us, how many of you know He has a lot for us? All that He has for us would overflow from us. I just think that's the dream right there. People can talk about the American dream all they want. There's great things in it. But there's no greater dream than the things that God has for us be overflowing from our lives. We want you to know that that's our prayer for you. That's our prayer for us as we walk this journey together. And to talk about overflow this morning, I have brought something with me. And I'm very excited about this because this right here has been a point of contention in my marriage for 7 years. Okay. Let's talk about this for a minute. First off, before we get there, pocket hoses are like the best thing in the world, aren't they? You don't have to carry all that big old thick hose around. The point of contention in my marriage is we bought a pressure washer several years ago, and I had to run over to Home Depot, and I had to go buy a hose pipe. And my wife was like, it's not a hose pipe. It's not a hose, it's a water hose. I'm like, it's not a water hose. It's a hose pipe. And for 7 years, we have never agreed. And so while this is being live streamed in front of all of the world, with my wife watching, I do want to take a poll, and I hope this comes through. If you're a hose pipe, I need you to throw your hands in the air. Okay, everybody look around. I need some people verifying this. If you're water hose, raise your hand. Oh, that's actually cut the live stream. Actually did not go as I thought it would go. I'm pretty devastated right now. Wow, okay, all right, we'll move forward. But regardless, I brought this today to talk about overflow, and because I think it's a really good picture. I'm not going to drag it around the whole time. I might pick it up and put it back down, but I want it to be a picture for us this morning because in life, we tap into different sources, don't we? This world is not short on sources. There are so many options out there of where we can build our life. I feel like every day there's another option for someone. There are so many different places we can tap in, so many different sources we can connect ourselves into. And sometimes it begins when some people in the room watching online maybe went through childhood trauma. Some people maybe dealt with a tough season. Some people maybe had some sort of trauma happen to them, maybe even later in life. Some people may just made a bad choice, but we find ourselves in a very, very, very tough spot trying to deal with the pressures of things that have taken place along with the stressors of today. And how many of you know there's a lot of those? And we're trying to figure this thing out called life, figure out, hey, I want God to use my life for his glory. I want to live a fulfilled life, and I'm juggling all of these things that are happening. But what happens is in the middle of that pain, so many times we need a quick fix because we are so miserable. And we take this hose pipe and we connect it to sources we had no business connecting it to, hoping that the source would give to us what it promised to give to us. And we find ourselves, I listed a few here, some of us with all this stuff we've walked through, dealing with anger, dealing with bitterness, dealing with unforgiveness, dealing with shame, dealing with fear, upset about things that have taken place, and we are so miserable at times that we need help. And so we tap into all of these different sources. Maybe we're just curious. Maybe we're desperate, maybe we're both. I don't know, but this morning I want to talk to us about what to me are the 4 biggest sources that humanity taps into when pain comes into their life. And this is coming from, I'm only in my 10th year of walking with teenagers, 10th year of ministry. My dad was a pastor for 11 years, and he was an associate for another 2.5. So this is really like me as a kid looking on and watching things Dad had to deal with, and then now stepping into it myself the last 10 years thinking through, okay, where in the world are we looking to get a fix for our problems? And I want to give you the top 4 today, and we're going to talk about each of them. The first source that we tap into, if I can hold this hose pipe here, the first source we tap into, in my experience, is isolation. We walk over to this spigot called isolation. I don't want to walk out of the cameras. Casey, I don't know if you're, no, I don't want to walk out from them. I don't know where the line is right here. We tap into this spigot of isolation. Why? Because isolation promises us something. Isolation makes us think that if we'll just tuck away and hide from our problems, then we'll feel better about them. Isolation's a thief, man. It tempts us and draws us away to where we are all by ourselves, thinking that life is better there. What happens is we go inward. Any bottlers in here? I'm asking. Throw your hand up just so we can know. Yeah, man, plenty of them. We go inward instead of standing face to face with someone who can help us and actually getting real about what's going on. Isolation draws us away. We tap into the source. We turn the water on, and we begin to taste what isolation offers us. Feels maybe pretty good at first because it feels like the problems went away, but we know it's just a big delusion, right? Because in time, those problems never move. They're still there. We're tucked away, and what we find in the long run is that isolation actually spiraled us into a worse place than we were in before. I could tell you when a teenager's dealing with something because of how isolated he is or how isolated she is. She's tucked away. He's tucked away. I'm like, man, we got to talk because something's going on. You're believing a lie. We need to come forward and actually talk about some things together in a quiet place and figure out how we can move forward, because if you don't deal with it, it's going to deal with you for the rest of your life. So we have these hard conversations, and it's not just teenagers in here. This is adults too. So tempting amidst the busyness of life to go tuck away and bury ourselves in a room somewhere, hoping that the problems, at least the feelings that we have because of those problems, will go away. But what we find in the end is that this spigot of isolation that seemed to offer us and promise us so much, in the end, we still find ourselves standing with the same problems we had before, if not more. Source 1, isolation. And just kind of take inventory of your own life. Maybe you're in that season right now. You've dealt with a lot of pain, a lot of things probably nobody knows about, and you've drifted into isolation. And you're now realizing that my words are true, and really even more so than that Jesus' words are true. Isolation does not come through with what it promises. It actually leads you into a worse place. The second source that we tap into, maybe we see isolation doesn't work, so we want to tap into a different source. Maybe it's another source. Maybe we, instead of leaving isolation and tapping into another source, we try to go to two sources at once. But in all these years, the second source that stands out to me is a source of pleasure. Pleasure offers a very quick fix to the pain that's in the heart of people. Specifically, especially dealing with teenagers and even adults over the years, especially sexual pleasure. I read a statistic the other day that 73% of teenagers are trapped in pornography. That's 3 of every 4. Why? Because there's pain on the inside They're navigating life, trying to figure it out. The enemy or someone offered it to them as something that would make them feel better. And now they're trapped in this vortex that they never wished they were in. I can't tell you how many dozens of teenagers have called me over the years and said, man, I'm trapped in this and I can't beat it. I can't beat it. I'm like, well, my first question to you is, are you glad you looked in the first place? And every single time, no. I wish I wouldn't have. Why? Because this little spigot of pleasure offered something that it could not fulfill. Here's the way I'll say it. It overpromised and it under-delivered. That's the crazy thing about sin, isn't it? It always demands more and it never satisfies. The source of pleasure, we all tap into it. It doesn't just have to be sexual pleasure. It can be any type of pleasure, but what we find is when we tap into that and we turn the water on and we begin to taste what it has to offer, it tasted good for a minute, but behind that moment of pleasure was a wall of shame, regret, and condemnation. It was a tsunami. I've watched. I spoke at a youth conference this past week out of town, and I stood before 100 teenagers and said, in 10 years, there's one thing that kills more than anything else that I've seen, and it's using sexuality outside of God's design. And it's a wall of tsunami. It's a tsunami of shame, of guilt, and of condemnation and of regret. And you'll find people, teenagers especially, adults the same. I've got a friend, I can't tell all these stories, but I've got so many friends that if they could go back, they'd do it different. But in the moment, it looked right. But behind it, they found that it was not what it claimed to be. The source of pleasure, the crazy thing is at the end of all of it, once we taste it and once time goes on, we find ourselves standing here with the same problems that we had before. So maybe we go and try another source. Can I give you the third source that stands out to me this morning? The third source that stands out to me is the source of wealth and success. And I'll put success with air quotes on it because everybody, kind of a subjective word right there. But what a lot of people do amidst the pain, amidst the struggles of life, they come and they tap into the source of wealth and of success. And what I mean by that is they actually say, hey, if I could just have enough, things would be all right. Anybody ever just been guilty of thinking that way before? Maybe if I can just get more. Maybe if I can reach this level, this standard, this promotion, maybe if this will happen and I have some level of wealth and of success in my life, the problems that I've been feeling in my soul for the past decade, they'll subside. But history tells us very differently. History tells us that this source of wealth and success that we're just trying to build in our lives overpromises and underdelivers. It doesn't come through. We find ourselves having reached that point. Maybe it happens. Maybe you build something special. Maybe you build a level of wealth in your life. You find yourself standing there like, okay, well, life's the same, kind of. And maybe I can go buy a few more things, feel a little bit better, but these problems, they're still here. We can look at history and really learn from people of the past, and kind of an extreme example, but I think it's a good example. Steve Jobs, he founded Apple in the mid-'70s and became a multi-billionaire by the time he was in his 30s. And I have a quote right there from him. I think they can put that on the screen. This is what Steve said. He was diagnosed with cancer in his mid-50s as a multi-billionaire. And he said, at this moment, lying on this sick bed and recalling my whole life, I realized that all the recognition and the wealth that I took so much pride in have paled and become meaningless in the face of impending death. It's interesting to me because this source right here seems like it's going to offer us so much. But it's when life gets real that we then realize it cannot give what it promised to give. So here we stand, having pursued wealth, having pursued success. Still, maybe even with that, we still think that if I can just get to this next level. Let's read what David says in Psalm 39 about the pursuit of success and the pursuit of wealth. He says in verse 6, surely every man walketh in a vain show. Surely they are disquieted in vain. He heaps up riches and doesn't even know who will gather them. One version actually says that he accumulates worthless wealth. Everybody say worthless. In the end, that's really all that it is. May we not believe the lie that this source of wealth and success will satisfy the need of our soul. May we not believe the lie that if we'll just get to a certain point, the problems will go away. No, because when we tap into that, we'll stand here and say, man, that was nice for a little while, but the problems are still there. There's one more source I want to mention this morning, and This source right here is not everybody by any means, but I do believe that it's some. It's a source of self-harm. Why? And I've dealt with dozens of teenagers who have dealt with this. Why is self-harm such a thing? Here's why. Because we've tried other sources that didn't come through, and we find out that we cannot seem to remedy the pain with the things that the world is offering. So we think to ourselves, if I can't get rid of it, I'll just replace it. And you have teenagers and even adults that are cutting themselves, thinking about ending life, inflicting harm upon their flesh. Why? Because it eases the pain of the soul temporarily and places it on the flesh. But where does it leave us in the end? It leaves us standing here with more pain than we had in the first place. What is this cycle we're talking about this morning? The cycle is this: the world has so much to offer, and we can go and flirt with it as long as we want to. But there's going to come a day where we're going to find out for ourselves that it cannot give what it's offered. And we'll stand here hopeless, wondering if it's even possible to get free of the things that have bound us for all of these years. And I just want to ask that question because maybe there's people in here that are really wondering. You've lived in pain for such a length of time that it's like, is it even possible to experience these wonderful things that God has for us? Things like hope. What is hope? Like, I haven't felt that in years, right? Things like joy. What is joy? What is this thing they call joy? I don't even know what that is. I haven't felt it ever. What is love? What is peace? What is rest? What is the goodness of God? What is the faithfulness of God? I don't even know what those things are. Is it even possible to begin to experience those things? What is purpose? You know? Is it possible to experience those things? And that's the question for us. And the answer is this: it is absolutely possible to experience the things that God has for us. How? Let's go to Romans 15. If you're taking notes, write this down. Romans chapter 15, verse 13. It's possible because there is another source. It's possible because when we exhaust all that the world has to offer us, we find ourselves standing in this place desperate for something, and we have the opportunity to discover another source. Paul tells us about this source when he prays for the church of Rome. He says, I pray that God, the source of what? The source of hope, will fill you completely with joy and peace because you trust in him. Then, everybody shout then. Then, and only then, if I can add that, you will overflow with confident hope through the power of the Holy Spirit. My question to us this morning is, what if the Bible is right? What if God warned us long ago that these sources that we dabble in and try and flirt with and put our hope in wouldn't come through? What if history, what if we actually need to listen to history for the people who have tried all these things and it's just left them in this same spot they were in before? What if we need to start listening to them? What if it's time to give God a shot? At what point is enough enough, right? What if it's time to give God a chance? Because when we choose to give him a shot and we choose to tap into the source that is God himself, and we say, I don't know, this is a long shot, but it is worth a chance, right? I've tried all this other stuff, this other mess hasn't happened. This right here, I'm just going to give it a shot. Turn the water on, begin to taste what begins to pour. What we find is that the taste is much different. It's like, that's different. Different. I'm not sure about it yet, but it's different. Begins to flow. You've chosen to connect to the source. You're trying to spend time with God, trying to understand this thing that's called the Bible, trying your best to show up at church. You're just trying to feel it out and figure it out. In time, here's what's going to happen. The water that flows from that source is so superior that it has the strength to flush your entire system of every ounce of pain you have ever carried in your life. The other sources couldn't do it, but when you tapped into this one, man, that thing started flowing, and you started to feel differently on the inside. The things that used to crush you, maybe they're still a struggle, but there's this ounce of life that's coming into me. There's this piece of joy that's coming in. There's this idea of peace that's coming in my life. There's what is happening to me? Anybody ever been there before? Like this, I don't know how to explain it, but something's just different inside of me because you chose to give God a shot. He is the source. Listen to me this morning. He's the source that never runs dry. Never. And what's crazy about it is when you finally tap into his source and ditch all the other stuff we've been messing with, you're going to wish you would come to his source a whole lot sooner because it would have saved us a whole lot of heartache. It would have saved us a whole lot of trouble. The challenge with Christianity, we're about to come to a close here. The challenge with Christians all across America and all across the world is that we live a life where for a few weeks, months, maybe even years, we tap into the source that is God himself. And we begin to live from that source, experiencing the life that is flowing from it. But then our pain starts to subside and we don't really think that we need that source anymore and we grow comfortable with where we are. So what do? We disconnect from the source without even meaning to because we stop spending time with him and stop showing up. And we begin to dabble in other sources and we begin to feel the things we used to feel and experience them. And it's like, what happened? Well, we disconnected from the source. And the thing about Christians is that's the cycle of life in so many people. Connected, disconnected, connected, disconnected. And they'll go to their grave living in that cycle. The greatest challenge for Christians in this day is can we stay? Everybody shout stay. Can we stay connected to the source for the rest of our lives? May we be a people that are steadfast. May we be a people that would learn from history. May we be a people that would stay connected to God with all that we are. And that we wouldn't stop there, that we would raise our families that way. That our sons and our daughters would be being raised up and we'd say, I messed with that source. It didn't come through. Don't give it the time of day. Trust me, son. Trust me. May we actually begin to have those levels of conversations. Grandkids, players, students, wherever your occupation is, find time to say, don't touch those sources. They offer you a lot and it sounds good in the moment, but it's going to land you in the same spot you're in. Let's talk through some things. Avoid isolation, avoid pleasure, avoid these things the world is offering you. Let me show you a better source. What do you think? It's the calling of Christians in this day. I want to end with a question. Tiffany, you can come on. I want to end with a question this morning. What is the purpose of our overflow? Why is it important that we make the transition from overflowing with things that we don't want in our life to the wonderful things that God has for us? Why do we need more hope, more joy, more peace, more freedom, more love, more of these things God has for us? Why do we need extra? The answer is very simple. It's because God intends to use the overflow of your life to impact other people. Our overflow is not just for us. Our overflow is for others. Let's go to Luke 6, if we would, verse 38. Powerful verse here. Jesus is talking. Luke records what Jesus is saying. Give and you will receive. When you do, your gift will return to you in full. Pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. Watch this. Leave that up there if you would. Luke is writing this and Jesus is talking about it at a time that when farmers would plant their fields, they would plant all of their acreage and prepare that land for harvest. When the time to harvest would come, they would only harvest the interior of that acreage. They would leave the perimeter with the fruits and the crops that had come forth. Why would farmers leave a perimeter unharvested? So that others in that region and in that town and in that area could come and benefit from the overflow of the farmer. It's an incredible picture that we don't see in America today because we think our overflow is just for us. We get more, we say, mine, tuck it away. We get more, mine, tuck it away. When in reality, our overflow was meant to flow from us and everywhere that we go. It's the purpose of more. There's got to be a huge shift that takes place in our minds, a huge shift that takes place in our hearts. So we begin to see the purpose of what overflow really is. What does that look like, right? It's easy to think about it financially. Somebody gives you somebody gives you more, or you get an income increase, or you get a gift, get a bonus, whatever, like the quick application there is go ahead and set some of that aside so that from the overflow of your life, others can benefit. Someone comes to you in need, you're like, I've got it. I've got more than I need. Here, mine, come see me. I can give it to you. I've got it. God's given me overflow. Maybe it's peace. Maybe it's joy. Maybe you walked through a hard season and God filled your life with peace because you chose to connect yourself to his source. And you have so much peace that you don't even know what to do with it. Someone comes to you in a troubling hour where they can't seem to figure out what's next. You can say, sir, ma'am, I've got more peace than I know what to do with. Would you come and let me pray for you? And here's what's going to happen as I pray for you. God's going to give you the peace that he gave me. He's not just going to give you enough, though. He's going to give you more than enough. It's going to be so much that you're going to be saying, stop with the peace, because you're going to have so much of it. Why are you going to have so much of it? Because there's going to be someone that comes to you that's in need, just like you came to me. And from the overflow of your life, other people are going to benefit. It's pretty incredible, isn't it? I want to give you 2 keys to an overflowing life this morning. If you're writing it down, this is where we come to an end. Watch this. The first key is realize you cannot create overflow yourself. A lot of people try, man. But when it comes down to it, we're just a good old hose pipe. What good is this hose if it's not connected to a source? No good at all. It can't fulfill its purpose until it connects to the right source. But my goodness, when the moment that it does, life begins to flow and it realizes why it's alive. You cannot create overflow yourself. Second thing, you need to stay connected to the source for the rest of your life. Stay right there, connect to it, and never disconnect. And then we will sit here together and watch as we begin to overflow with all the things we've dreamed of overflowing with. And the things of the past won't wreak havoc on our lives anymore. Would you stand to your feet with me?